Welcome back, folks. Today's episode is timely. This month is National Skin Cancer Month. I had no idea that it was until we started looking it up. And so we decided that this would be the perfect episode to close off the month with as we enter into summer, because my guest is an expert when it comes to all kinds of skin cancer. He also happens to be extremely entertaining. We had a really great conversation. I know that you are going to love it. His name is Dr. Teo Soleymani, and and super awesome guy and super awesome episode filled with practical solutions. In the meantime, before we go there, want to thank you guys. If you're new to this podcast, you may or may not know that I also am very active on Instagram. At Natalie Nidham is where you will find me. And if you want to learn about my membership community, sign up for the newsletter, or any number of other cool things, you can head over to natnidham.com. That's my website, and all that information is there. So thank you so much for being here. If you think that this episode might help somebody else in your world, and it probably will, because this is a big topic as we get into the sunny season, make sure that you share it with your friends, your networks, and anybody else you think would benefit. My guest today is Dr. Teo Soleymani, a Stanford-trained, double board-certified dermatologist and fellowship-trained Mohs and facial reconstructive surgeon. He's nationally recognized for his pioneering work in treating complex skin cancers, and he brings a refreshingly nuanced perspective to the conversation around sun exposure, skin aging, and cancer risk. In this episode, we explore the myths that surround sun safety, why not all melanomas are caused by the sun, and how finding balance might be the key to both healthier skin and a better relationship with sunlight. If you've ever wondered whether sunscreen is friend or foe, this conversation offers clarity with just enough humor to keep it real. Plus, we talk about his incredible product, Sunpowder, aka your new best friend if you hate the greasy SPF life. If you want to give Sunpowder a try, and I highly recommend that you do, because first of all, it tastes amazing, and secondly, it works from the inside out to protect your skin. Now, what you can do is visit sunpowder.co/discount/nat15 to save 15% off your purchase. And that'll be in the show notes too. So if you don't have a pen handy, you can go check it out later, but I'll repeat it for you. sunpowder.co/discount/nat15 and save 15% off.
Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider.
Dr. Teo Soleymani, it is such a pleasure to have you here today. I am super excited about this conversation.
So am I. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, when I saw the email in my inbox, I was like, oh, hell yeah. We are so doing this.
Yeah, totally. This is awesome. I'm excited. So many things to talk about, so many things to, unravel and, go over controversies and nonsense and stuff like that.
100%. I mean, so what we're talking about today is the skin and the sun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, my two favorite things.
Your two favorite things.
Maybe not mixed together, but my two favorite things.
Well, no, but you're not. I mean, that I feel like there's definitely a couple of groups in the world, and there's a group of people in the world who are terrified of the sun. They will not step outside unless they are slathered in USPF 10,000 sunscreen. They will. They absolutely, and to their credit, they have porcelain skin. They've got the whole thing going on. They're vitamin D deficient.
I used to joke around my East Coast colleagues. I'm, a dermatologist and fellowship trained skin cancer surgeon in Los Angeles, and I did some of my training on the East Coast. And I joke around that my East Coast colleagues used to dress like beekeepers during the summertime, just covered head to toe. Gloves on, face mask, shield driving, and I was like the anti of that, just, going out in the sun. I wasn't obviously trying to burn or anything like that, but there's a component of the sun that I think makes you feel good. There's
Hmm.
a component of the sun that provides things that you can't quantify in a lab, test tube, or a measurement. And I think that translates to overall well-being. And I laugh all the time. Like, yes, I think my colleague Sarah, she had gorgeous, gorgeous skin, but heaven forbid we went to a park for a picnic.
Yeah, exactly. But then we've got the other extreme now. We now have another extreme of people who follow the work of a couple of big names in the longevity biohacking space, one of them being Dr. Jack Kruse.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
these are people who are like, oh no, 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 we need to be out in the sun. And they're out in the and they talk about building a sun callus, and they're out there every single day, and they are willfully tanning. And
yeah.
and I sit and look at so I look at the beekeepers, and I'm like, I think you're missing something. And then I look at those guys, and full disclosure, I am a sun lover.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was a lifeguard for years as a teenage, like into my early adulthood. I had someone say to me, Nat, you were born to be tanned. You look so amazing with the tan. And I
Oh,
think,
and your skin ethically probably wants that, tolerates that, is meant to do that. I think
yeah, to a point.
there's like a few important things to take into account, and this is probably really controversial coming from a skin cancer surgeon and dermatologist, is that the vast majority of skin cancers that will kill people are not directly sun related.
So that's a big thing, right?
Yeah. And
But we're
now,
going to talk about two issues today. So just
yeah, yeah,
I'm going to let you go on with that thread, but we're going to talk about skin cancer, which is one thing. And then
yeah,
we're going to talk about skin aging, like the
yeah,
aesthetics piece, which is a
yeah,
different
yeah,
piece of the puzzle.
yeah.
So keep going.
Yeah, so I think I think one thing people don't realize in that the sun avoidance doesn't necessarily make you survive or live longer from skin cancer risk. Now, the most common garden variety skin cancers are generally sun related, but there's a big genetic predisposition to them, which is why a lot of people from northern European latitudes will show this, but people from equatorial latitudes won't have that inherent risk, even though they're in the sun much longer.
So
So
let's name those. That's the
yeah, so
squamous and the
the
basal
three
cell.
most common skin cancers we talk about: basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. Historically, melanomas have been our most life-threatening or
Mhm.
our worrisome ones. Ironically, the majority of melanomas don't have that chronic sun signature in their genetics. The majority of melanomas arise on sun protected skin, the backs of men, the lower
Yeah.
legs and backs of women. So I think,
So why is
sun
that?
of genetics, genetic predisposition. Now, dermatologists make a big stink about the sun because it's the only factor they can control. We can't really control your genetic predisposition or your family history, but what I can control is how much environmental injury you're going to get. But the reality is, sun avoidance doesn't necessarily protect you from metastatic melanoma as much as we want to believe that it does.
What does? Do we
Great
know?
question. We don't know.
Because I'm married to someone like classic man, middle of the back
Yeah,
melanoma. Now
yeah.
he's British heritage,
There you
so
go. Yeah,
he's my vanilla guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, and there's things that you can do that'll help mitigate the risk. Obviously, like every time you're in the sun, don't burn.
Yeah,
A
well there'd be
burn is
that.
basically your body's signal that, hey, you killed the first layer of skin. Like, I didn't like this. You
Hmm.
literally destroyed it. That's what a peeling sunburn is. But aside from that, just surveillance and monitoring are really our only formidable way to protect against future melanoma risk, especially metastatic melanoma, which is really what we worry about.
Yeah,
Now,
and
the more common ones like
yeah,
basal cell and squamous cell, little more in sync with sun.
yeah.
But again, genetic predisposition is a huge factor because when we looked at our randomized sunscreen studies from the mid 90s to now, when we looked at diligent sun protection versus no sun protection, the incidence of basal cell carcinoma didn't change.
But what about the ingredients but did they control for the ingredients in the sunscreen? Like what about the narrative that and there's a big narrative in my space
Yeah,
that
yeah.
a lot of the sunscreens out there actually have ingredients that they themselves are carcinogenic.
It's a great question. These studies didn't control for them, but some of these studies didn't even use sunscreen. They used other forms of sun protection, shade, shelter, things like that.
Right. Or
So
like a shirt or as like
yeah,
a sun
yeah,
shirt.
hat, broad brimmed hat, things like that. So I think there's a lot to, I think the over sun fearing or fear mongering is a problem. Obviously, your body's telling you, like, if you get a sunburn constantly, that's probably not the brightest idea. You're constantly burning the top layer of your skin off, so something's going to go awry. But I think finding that middle ground where you're not dressing like a beekeeper and you're not, constantly tanning your perineum, thinking it's gonna do
Which
something
really
for
was
you.
never designed to
I
does it
know it
even have
wasn't. There's
melanin?
there's better ways to get sun. There's better areas to get sun. Just it's
So let's go back. Let's dial it back because I
yeah, yeah,
think that I mean I'm really excited about this podcast. So I've got a million questions, and we're going to
yeah,
go
yeah,
deep before we've really covered the
yeah,
basics.
yeah, yeah,
So let's talk a little bit about tanning. Let's talk
yeah,
about melanin and what it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that melanin is a protective response from the
yeah,
body to the sun's rays.
yeah.
Is that true?
That's spot on. And
Okay.
everybody has a genetically predefined amount of melanocytes, which are the cells that produce melanin. So when we get a tan, we don't increase the number of those cells, but we increase the product, which is melanin, in response to absorb UV light. It
Okay.
acts like a sink.
Right.
So instead of UVA, B, and C going through into the dermis, it kind of sits and gets absorbed in these little melanosomes or these pigment globules.
Okay. And then the other piece of the puzzle where people start to, where the story starts to move also is that certain rays of the sun are damaging to the DNA of the skin.
Yeah,
They're damaging to is it just the DNA, or does the sun directly damage collagen fibers and
yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
components of the skin?
It's predominantly the UV spectrum. Now we get some additional rays like gamma rays, X rays, and cosmic radiation, which it really isn't a problem when we're at like sea level. But people who fly a lot, for example, will pick up much more of those.
Yeah.
But they cause two things. They cause mutations in our skin cells' DNA, and what our body is so amazing in doing is it finds those mistakes and it self corrects them.
Mhm.
So when we get sunburns as a child, our immune system's good enough to go in and fix those mutations that occur.
Mhm.
But as we get older, our body's immune system weakens and our ability to survey and correct that damage gets weakened, which is why these things are a problem of adulthood.
Right.
Also, there is degradation or breakdown of collagen and elastin and thinning of our dermis, which is why as we age, our skin gets thinner, gets more fragile, we bruise easier. There's more and more laxity. It's because of that breakdown. Now, a lot of this is also genetically predefined. So if you
Mhm.
look at your family history, if mom had great skin, grandma had great skin, then you're probably going to maintain that. The You obviously accelerate it by getting a lot of the stuff that will break it down, but some of this is, genetically predefined.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, my grandmother had spectacular skin, but she didn't spend a day of her life in the sun.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's an exaggeration, but she did not have a life when she was a young woman living in Morocco,
yeah,
raising 1,000 babies. She was
yeah.
not exactly basking in the sunshine, right?
I
So,
mean, the simplest thing you and I talked about, put a grape in the sun.
mhm.
First day, probably nothing will happen. First week, probably nothing will happen. Give it a month and you'll get a raisin. It's not much different than our skin. So finding where that threshold is the hardest part.
Yeah. And so is that what about the idea of a sun callus? Talk to me about that because that's a new term that's been kind of getting thrown around a lot in certain circles, and I'm curious because I think they're kind of going on the premise that if you don't burn then you're fine, which is a story. I'm not again,
So
I think what we're tell me.
so when we talk, yeah, I mean, a lot to talk about on that. Um, So when we talk about sunlight, we generally talk about the full spectrum of light, including the visible light and as well as UV and infrared, which ideally you can have the full spectrum of light without the UV component to it.
Okay.
And if you have that built as an artificial source, I think it's excellent, particularly the red or near infrared sources of light.
Mm-hmm.
There is some good data coming out that it's, anti-aging. It does provide some rejuvenating benefits, mostly from increased blood flow and vasculature to the skin and hair follicles.
Mm-hmm.
But if you try to truly encapsulate the sun in and of its whole in an artificial source or a real source, you're getting ultraviolet, and even a small amount of ultraviolet does provide some benefit, vitamin D synthesis, a little bit of pigmentation, which some people think is protective or not. Now, different dermatologists will argue whether that's truly protective or your body fighting something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you encapsulate the entire spectrum that we get from the sun every day, over time, it's going to be a bigger problem than it is a benefit.
Right. If you're getting the UVA, UVB.
Yeah,
Um,
UVA, UVB, UVC every single day as a form of your sun palace, then over time it will increase your risk for premature aging. Everybody's going to age.
yeah.
That's
No,
no
for
doubt
sure.
about it.
How fast it's
That
happening. Yeah.
exactly, and Mother Nature, Father Time wins all, right? But the question is, are you aging at your genetically predefined slope, or are you going faster because you're doing stuff that is aging you faster?
Right. But with the UVB, because there's also there's some lights around that will give a very precise dose of UVB.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're
My
talking
practice
like,
has them.
yeah, so there I have one
It's
upstairs, and it's amazing, right? Because it's and the way this guy's designed his light is that he from his research, he believes that the red and infrared spectrums, the other spectrums that are less harmful, kind of prep the skin. And then you get your UVB, which would be your high noon sun, and then you finish with infrared and red. And so what he's done is he's designed this little light that over the course of, depending on where your skin sits on the Fitzpatrick scale.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm a 3, I think. I think I'm a 3. Um, and it's a 4-minute program, and it runs through, and then it hits UVB in the middle, and then the only purpose of the UVB is to get my body to generate vitamin D
yeah,
in
yeah.
this
So you
case.
can, yeah, yeah. So you can generate that's predominantly, and you don't need much
Like we're
UVB to
talking like
generate.
a minute maybe.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he
You
said
don't
it.
need much.
Yeah, he said it that if you get any closer than 18 inches to the device, there's an alarm that goes off and the UVB shuts down. Like
Yeah,
he's
that so we use, like, I in my practice we have narrowband UVB for patients to treat, skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis and vitiligo, and it's a very specific wavelength of light. It's usually 311 nanometers. We even have a laser called the eczema laser, which shines a 308 nanometer
mm,
UVB light on the skin. So in the right setting and for the right patients, it's excellent. You don't need much of it. That's the
yeah,
key.
it's like a minute or
Yeah,
whatever.
you don't need much of it. Now, the I did a lot of light studies back when I was in New York City, and we actually found that, interestingly enough, light from the room and the laptop and the iPhone and where people are working on Wall Street can actually change your skin's pigment. We published that, and it was the first time we ever figured that out. So
Depressing.
clearly there's something that we don't know about this full spectrum. We always assumed that it was just UV, and these are visible light sources devoid of UV. So I
Hmm.
think but in terms of priming, there's a little bit of question about whether that's true or not, because we know our melanocytes don't respond to the red spectrum, infrared spectrum. We
Right.
get some increased vascular flow and targeting of other structures, but um, I think it's fine. My fundamental like tenet to light and sunlight is two things: family and personal history. So if your family and personal history tolerates sun, you're
Hmm.
probably okay with a longer duration in sunlight.
Yeah.
And then number two, burning. Any
Yeah.
form of burning is a problem.
Yeah.
You know, that's like it's
Also, it
just saying,
hurts.
hey, I got too much, right? It's like,
Yeah.
for lack of a better description, hangovers. Not
Yeah.
that I'm advocating alcohol use, because that's like a totally different story. But when you've had a hangover, your body's already told you it's dehydrated, it's had acetaldehyde. We've crossed that threshold of tolerability.
Yeah.
So same thing. You know, I can tolerate an hour in midday, mid-latitude sun. I'm based in Los Angeles. I have ethnically Armenian. My dad still doesn't understand what I do for a living. He's as tan as my leather shoes. Does that give me a carte blanche to go to the beach every single
No,
day
but he
for eight
doesn't have
hours? No.
melanoma.
Yeah. What's that?
He doesn't have melanoma.
No, he doesn't.
There's a big,
No.
big tan. No, but going back to what you
Yeah.
said earlier, right? I mean, it's interesting that it's such a, and I don't know why, but I guess it's because, as you said earlier, it's the only controllable factor that people can
Yeah,
point to,
it's
right?
one of
It's
yeah, and one of and you know, I see so many forms of skin cancer that are not sun related, which is wild. I mean, I see um HPV is a huge one. I operate on a lot of skin cancer in the genital region in men and women that's HPV driven, not sun related.
oh, you're
Um,
kidding.
no, huge
So these
problem.
are parts that don't see the sun
Yeah,
unless you're a
usually.
perineum bather.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
I don't ask what they do for a living, but
No.
yeah, usually. Or patients from rural areas that drink from well water. I see a lot of arsenic skin cancers, and they're usually in sun protected areas like palms and soles. So there's so many other factors besides that. I think in the big cities like New York City and Chicago and Los Angeles and stuff, we've become like fear mongers of the sun. I don't think that's healthy.
Hmm.
But I also don't think that volitionally getting a lot of UV is probably the brightest idea either.
Yeah.
Pun
Well,
in, pun intended.
the HPV related skin cancer is interesting, right? Because there
Yeah,
is there is a line of thought out in the world that cancer in general is related to viral, some kind of virus or
there's a lot of
parasitic or
there are a lot of cancers that are related to viruses. Lots and lots of them. Um, the most common cause of throat cancer now in the United States is HPV. It's no longer smoking. There are viruses that cause lymphomas and leukemias. I mean, there's a lot of thought behind that. So figuring out how to prime the body's immune system to be able to identify these things is like the golden egg of
yeah.
medicine. We're moving towards that direction. I mean, even cancer care in the U.S. and the world, the idea of immunotherapy, which wasn't
Hmm.
around 5 years ago,
Hmm.
all came from came from melanoma.
Really. And
Yeah,
it's
the
all
Nobel
about
Prize
what
was in two.
in people, so and that's interesting because you know what? I think that when my husband had melanoma, he had it removed from his back. Um, the doctor at the time said something to me about work coming down the pipes. And I think she
Yeah,
was referring to immunotherapy. So immunotherapy is essentially, I mean, this is what we need to be doing anyway, but immunotherapy is marshaling your own immune system
100%.
to fight
Yeah,
on your behalf,
yeah.
which frankly really rocks because you're not wiping out the rest of your body in the process.
100%. There's nothing better than our own body's ability to recognize what's bad and what isn't. It just took us almost 100 years of medicine to figure out how to do that. But immunotherapy basically takes it. Imagine a group of hungry dogs, and there's a cage, and you just lift the cage up, and the dogs know to find the food, which is the cancer.
That's
It's
insane.
unbelievable.
So
Yeah,
is this widely practiced now?
yeah.
Is that
It's
going to
it's the
change
stand.
melanoma completely? Because
It's it
melanoma is the
it's no longer a
deadliest.
death sentence.
Really?
Yeah, it's not even the number one killer in skin anymore.
What
But we
is?
use it's squamous cell, the squamous cell
Squamous
carcinoma.
cells.
Yeah, yeah, by 2 to 1.
Okay, so let's talk. Okay,
Yeah,
good, good
so many
segue.
things to
So
talk.
tell me the difference between
Yeah,
basal squamous and melanoma.
yeah.
What,
These
like, or tell us what's the difference between those three
yeah.
cancers?
So they're the terms are defined by what cell of origin they come from.
Okay.
So melanoma is a cancer of the cells that produce melanin,
Yep.
which are melanocytes.
Yep.
Squamous cell carcinoma is a cancer that comes from our skin cells, the keratinocytes.
Okay.
And then basal cell carcinomas, which are the most common cancer of mankind, about 1 in 4 Americans will develop them at some point in their life, come from the stem cells in the bottom layer of on the bottom of our first layer of skin. They originate from the same cell line that produces hair follicle.
Oh,
These cells, these cancers, basal cells, tend not to have the ability to do anything in terms of spread throughout the body, but they're just locally destructive.
okay.
So the names define where they come from. By and large, squamous cell and basal cell are the most common, and we see these a lot. Probably operate on, I don't know, I would say, hundreds of patients a month with squamous cell, basal cell, melanoma. But there's many other forms. They just
Mhm.
define by where their
No way
origin is.
there.
Yeah,
So the squamous cell you said now has taken over for melanoma as the
yeah,
core.
almost 3 times as many.
How does it
We just
metastasize or
It
does it?
does. It
Oh,
does.
that's interesting.
It's but unlike melanoma, which can be, which can spread at the blink of an eye, even the smallest thing can send off a cell. The squamous cells are a little more predictable. They have to get pretty big. They have, their their risk factor is very predictable. Usually I see these in patients that, come from underserved areas or farmers, coal miners, things like that, have been outside and haven't seen a doctor in a long time. They come with a lump here or a lump here. And, by that time, cat's out the bag. But
Hmm.
melanoma historically used to be very, very, I mean, Bob Marley died of a melanoma on his toenail, and he
Yeah.
thought it was a soccer injury and a bruise. So melanomas behave a little bit differently.
Yeah. Okay, so you just mentioned coal miners and
Yeah.
farmers, two
Yeah.
very different populations because coal miners live underground, so they
Yep.
sure as heck don't see the sun.
Yep.
And the farmer lives above ground and people would say, "Oh yeah, farmer, that makes sense to me because they're
Yeah.
outside all the time." But the coal miner makes no sense when we go by the old narrative. When we move
Yep.
into
Yep.
the new narrative, maybe it's a whole different kettle of fish. And what are your thoughts on that? Is it exposure to toxins? Because I think farmers are very prone to all kinds of things because of if unless they're a biodynamic organic farmer, they're being exposed to pesticides and herbicides and horrible
Yeah. There's
chemicals.
100% for sure, like the environmental toxins from coal mining that are accelerating these things. I think there's another component that we see, which I used to see in people on the East Coast, and you see this in Toronto as well, as you're either in the dark for a long period of time from winter, or you're underground for a long period of time. So when you do get the option to be out in the sun, and summers are short, you're out. Yep, you're out there. And that actually, that trajectory where your skin is not primed, you
Yeah.
burn right away. You get the worst sunburns of your life, in that short 6 week summer that you have. So that's actually a bigger problem than than what we describe as sun hardening. So here in Los Angeles, there's sun constantly. I have a
Hmm.
constant, olive skin, whereas I was living in New York, I didn't.
Yeah.
So there's a component of sun hardening. Now, does that protect you? That's still questionable. I personally think it does. I think there's some protection with sun hardening. The counter to that is that I'm probably gonna get wrinkles a little bit faster because I'm constantly getting some mild UV that's persistently keeping me tan and protected.
Yeah.
Um, so they're a double-edged sword. Do you want to
Yeah.
fry like a crisp, in the short summers, or do you want some sun hardening, but you're probably gonna age a little bit faster?
So sun hardening really speaks to the sun callus
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
that
for
all these
sure.
guys you're talking about, right? So it's
And there's medical conditions where we recommend sun hardening.
mhm, right.
Polymorphous light eruption, which is the springtime eruption that patients get, typically in the Northeast, where they get really itchy the first exposure of sun. The treatment to that is sun hardening.
Hmm,
The problem is when you tell a patient go sun harden, they're gonna they take that as a blank check
crazy.
to doc said I don't need to wear sunscreen. I'm gonna go to Miami Beach and just burn to a crisp. Like, don't do that. Yeah,
No. What about the narrative that getting sunburns as a child sets you up for a higher risk of skin cancer down the road? I feel like what you said earlier
oh
kind of flies against that a little bit. You said that kids, and
yeah.
and I
I'm
believe
gonna
this,
be
they
I'm gonna
repair
be
their DNA
ostracized.
damage. Huh?
I'm gonna be ostracized for saying this. I think that's a load of shit.
Good. I love that.
I really do, because it the damage that we notice, the DNA damage, if it's not corrected, is tumorigenesis by definition.
Yeah.
These insults are corrected. We don't. It's this common misconception that we carry over genetic mutations into adulthood. We don't. We fix them, our body's ability to fix them, or else the machinery will break down right away.
Mm-hmm.
The the there's a lot of these association studies or these correlation studies that aren't truly associative or causative, but they're more like, oh, we found this risk, so we associated it or correlated it with this. It's like people with a shoe size of 12 or 10 times higher likelihood to have green eyes. Does it mean your shoe size determines your eye color? No.
No.
The problem with these studies is that usually when people are getting sunburns at a young age, they have lifestyle habits that will continue that into adulthood.
Right.
Melanoma, adolescent pediatric melanoma is exceptionally rare, and they're almost always genetically defined. They're not problems of adulthood. The increased susceptibility also is a factor of what, we're looking at a person's genetics. If you are likely to burn when you're a young child and you get frequent burns, you probably have a Fitzpatrick 1, 2, 3 skin type,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those patients tend to have a higher incidence of skin cancers just by their virtue of what their family ancestry and genetics are.
Right. Right.
I don't have that many blistering sunburns as a child. I tolerated the sun more. If you look
Mm-hmm.
at my family lineage, skin cancer is not that common at all. So when we look at, oh, John Smith, who had blistering sunburns, is of Irish descent, and he had melanoma. Teo's of Armenian descent, and he didn't. We say it's a 75% increase. It's not. It's not because of his blistering sunburns as a child.
Yeah. It's
That
just
being said,
background.
don't obviously burn.
No,
you
no,
know?
but what's interesting about that is so I'm Middle Eastern descent as well, and so if I look at my grandparents, most of my nobody's ever,
Yeah,
except
yeah,
my parents now are both dealing with this whack-a-mole. I described it to you
yeah, yeah,
earlier, like this
yeah,
whack-a-mole
yeah,
situation where like my poor dad is like he's got things burned off his nose and off his scalp, and like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
this never-ending weird cycle, and so now they've become terrified of the sun.
Yeah,
Um,
which is really frustrating, because I think skin is the one last frontier in which we almost guilt patients into thinking they did this to themselves. Like
yeah.
no other cancer, in no other specialty do we make with the exception of maybe smoking, which has fallen out of popularity. We don't guilt patients into thinking they did this to themselves,
Yeah.
except the skin. What your parents are going through is essentially what we call immunosenescence, in
Hmm.
which our immune system gets weaker and it can't correct the small damages that have accumulated over time.
Yeah.
And most of that accumulation is in adulthood. There's a really cool study that was done that looked at cosmetic patients and patients who were undergoing eyelid surgery, for cosmetic
Yeah.
purposes. We call it a blepharoplasty or an upper eyelid lift.
Hmm.
And they took the skin from these patients that's normally discarded, normal looking skin, and we looked at mutation profiles of the skin cells. And they had
Mm.
the same mutation profiles as those that we see in the most common skin cancers. But there was no skin cancer in the eyelids. So there's something else that we still don't fully understand that triggers the cancer to develop. And I
Interesting.
think that's where the immune play comes into factor.
Well, for sure, the immune
Yeah.
system is going to come into. Do you think that do you have a theory about anything else like systemic inflammation or
So yeah,
like a
so I think
hypothesis? Like,
no, I mean, I great. I don't know. There's definitely something. Look, I mean, my generation and the generation younger than me are probably the most sun avoidant of all generations to date. And we look at the trajectory of skin cancers and it's still going like this in young adults. People can argue that, oh no, it's the baby boomers, but no, we're seeing it 18, 17, 15,
you are.
20, all the time. So there's clearly something more than just pure sun. There is something about immune dysregulation. Now, could it be diet? Could it be um, just lifestyle? Could it be some other environmental factor that
Well,
we can't control for?
toxins. I mean,
Something, yeah,
environmental
for sure,
pollutants. I mean,
for sure.
I mean, you mentioned artificial light from devices earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Devices weren't around, when I was a kid.
No,
I didn't have an iPad.
no,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
no. And you now see 2-year-olds in front of iPads, like,
Yeah,
which
drives me
is
crazy.
slightly horrifying. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, it drives me
we
crazy.
digress.
Yeah,
So, let's say I'm worried about sitting in front of a screen all day, which I do.
yeah, yeah,
So would regular sunscreen help my skin, or like I hate
yeah,
wearing sunscreen, like let's be clear. And I have really good sunscreen upstairs that is non-toxic. It's
yeah,
nice,
yeah,
it's like the zinc micronized stuff that doesn't
yeah,
make
yeah.
you look like Casper the Ghost. Like, would it pay for me to wear that, to use that stuff?
So it depends again, look, kind of depends on your risk, depends on what you're seeing in your skin. If you're noticing things that shouldn't be happening, if you're seeing pigmentation that you can't account for because you're not in the sun, then maybe. I would say if you're on your third skin cancer and you're 50 and you're,
Yeah.
in Wall Street and working on, computers all day, then maybe.
Right.
Interestingly, when we talk about common sunscreens, they usually refer to chemical-based sunscreens.
Hmm.
They do nothing to shield visible light.
Yeah.
So I've stuck my intuition's always been the old 1980s zinc mineral, non-chemical sunscreens till date work better than the chemical sunscreens.
Yeah.
The reason the chemical sunscreens came about is that in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, the micronized minerals went on kind of chalky. They
Hmm.
didn't feel that great. So what happened is cosmeceutical industry said, let's come up with something that has a smoother feel that you can wear makeup on top and it won't look like sandpaper.
Yeah.
That's the only reason these came about. Or else, when you look at spectrum coverage, the minerals provide much broader spectrum and visible light protection.
Yeah.
Patients who have pigmentary problems like melasma, it's a common one in women, and it's a really frustrating condition to treat. It's triggered by these overhead lights. It's triggered by laptop. It can be worsened by visible light. So in those settings, there's things that you can do besides just topicals. You can just get a shield for your computer that has a light screen. There is visible shielding, things that you can do. But if you don't have that risk, I'm a minimalist by nature.
Yeah.
The less stuff I put on my skin, the less things I have to do, the more adherent I'm probably going to be.
For sure.
You
I
know?
mean, there's some good screens around now. There's a company called there's a couple of really good ones, and they're using, now I'm not sure about all the ingredients, but Young Goose is
Mhm.
they have great skincare, and they've got
Yeah,
a
yeah,
really nice sunscreen that's a little bit
yeah,
tinted.
yeah, yeah,
It's actually not a hard thing to have on.
yeah, yeah.
And then the other one is a company called Third Rock. I don't know if you've ever heard of Third
Haven't
Rock.
heard of Third Rock, but I got to look
Really
into it.
interesting guy. He's kind of like this biochemist dude with, crazy hair. He looks a little bit like a mad scientist, and really,
Scientist, yeah,
really
that's awesome.
nice
I
guy.
like that.
And he's got a beautiful sunscreen that is it's zinc and it's minerals, but it goes on almost invisible, and
Yeah,
it's got
that's
some
awesome.
essential oils in it. Like, it's really nice product for the
And
body.
we've moved forward so much from like the 80s, 90s, and
Bain
2000s
de
in terms of
Soleil.
feel and stuff. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But again, it goes back to we take two steps forward and then one step back. There's so much talk about chemical sunscreen, and I've said this from the get go, in that if we as a collective medical society say you can't put this on newborns to 6-month olds, well,
It's a
what would
problem.
make me think putting it on my skin for 40 years is probably going to be okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a huge thing that we're also missing in that we are recommending this to be applied every single freaking day
Yeah.
for 40, 50 years of your life. Surely there's going to be some absorption. And there's a lot of studies that have come out and shown, and even like in, unfortunately, medicine has become politicized. There's journals that are on this side, there's journals that are
Oh,
on that
I
side, but
know.
even journals that are on the other side have found like, oh shit, when we apply chemical sunscreens, we detect it in the bloodstream, 500 times what the upper limit of normal is. So probably not a good idea.
Well, your skin is your largest organ of
Yeah,
absorption.
yeah,
Like,
it's
it's
like,
pretty basic.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is not rocket science, people.
I
This should
know,
not
I
be a
know.
surprise. No, I know. Listen, I mean, I will occasionally go to the beach in Florida, but I will only go early in the morning or at the end of the day when I'm there. I try to stay away from
Yeah.
midday just because it's too intense, right?
Yeah.
Besides,
Yeah.
it's too hot and you burn
Yeah.
your feet, the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. It's annoying. Then you
But
can't have a good time.
but you have like parents, well-meaning, are like spraying, and the spray sunscreen drives me ballistic, right?
Yeah.
Because you have
Yeah.
these clouds of sunscreen flying
Oh,
around, meaning guess what? Guess where they're not,
yep.
right?
On the skin. That. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're inhaling them. My lungs don't need sunscreen.
Oh.
It's guys, you should be watching this because Teo's just like throwing his arms up in
It's
despair.
driving me. It drives me crazy to think. First of all, the worst sunburns I've ever gotten when I've worn sunscreen have been from the sprays.
Well,
It's
because they don't
uneven.
work.
Doesn't go on clear. Yeah. It's. I have a picture from Florida of arches on my shoulders and back in areas where, and I'm like embarrassed to say this. I think it was a fellow in New York when this happened, and that was the last time I used a spray. But there's two huge problems with the sprays, not just coverage wise. Number one, there's an inhalational hazard from the micronized particles or the chemicals that over time will become a problem. We know this as a fact.
Yeah, okay.
And then the second is the propellant itself often tends to be some benzene derivative, which
It's
we already know,
carcinogenic.
like, hey, you probably shouldn't be sniffing gasoline. And not that it's equivalent, but benzene and gasoline are in the same family of, petrocarbons. And you probably shouldn't be breathing that stuff in. So uh, just don't use the sprays.
Yeah. So
Don't do
let's
that.
just make that, if you don't get anything else from this episode, do not use spray sunscreens.
Yeah, don't use that shit.
Please,
It's
just don't.
terrible. Don't use that stuff. Yeah.
It's
And
going
look,
to be,
I operate on a lot of patients, and my job is essentially defined by sun related problems. Will I go outside without sunscreen? All the time.
mm-hmm,
Do I wear
mm-hmm.
it every day? No.
Yeah.
Do I need to wear it every day? No. I go from my house to my car to the office or the operating room, and I go home. I don't find a need for it. Now, if I'm going to be out for a longer period of time than my skin can tolerate, then I'll put it on because first thing I'm thinking is I don't want to age.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I'm thinking is I just took this guy's nose off. I don't want to be that guy having that. So
Yeah.
if I can mitigate some of my risk factors, obviously I'll try my best. But do I wear it every day? No. And it's like my colleagues are going to kill me right now if when they watch this
No,
podcast.
but you're talking about such, we're talking about, like, let's have some common sense, right?
Yeah, 100%.
That's all it is. And I think that, I mean, look, admittedly, you've got people like, I think it's people in Koreans are crazy for their skin. These are the people
Yeah.
walking around with umbrella, like
Yeah.
parasols. Which, what they don't realize, and I learned the hard way as a lifeguard, is you can wear a hat, but your eyeballs are still going to get scalded by the sun from the reflection off the water and off other surfaces. Like,
For
you
sure.
learn this once the hard way. I'm
For
lying
sure.
there cooking cucumber slices on my eyes at night. Like,
Miserable.
Unbelievable.
Miserable.
But the unless your goal is to preserve the skin you were born with, which, I mean, if that's your goal, that's your goal. For the rest of us, going to and from the car, and those little bits of exposure, if nothing else, might give your body a fighting chance to produce some vitamin D.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll tell you,
but
I'll tell you a few things about that. In Asian populations, I see this all the time. The sun avoidance is a response to social hierarchy stature. So in Asian cultures, historically, the upper class, the royalty were as fair as possible, and the working class or the lower income classes were, because they were outside and working all the time, they were darker. So you looked, if the paler you were, the fairer you were, it looked like you came from money or from higher class stature. So that's where it trickles down in their society. To the fairer you look, the less likely you are to be a day laborer. Not so much from a medical standpoint. That's one. Number two, the other thing that I think is and this is a problem across the world. We've digressed to a society where we say things like, avoid the sun at all costs, but take this pill to replace your vitamin D, take this pill to replace that, take that pill to replace this, where you're like, do you really need to do that? Or can we can we be a little bit normalized, or have some common sense and get the full spectrum of what nature provided us, you know? And then the third thing is there are certain conditions that need daily shielding if you want to treat it. Patients with lupus, patients with melasma, etc., where they're exceptionally sun sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
then by all means shield yourself from from morning to night. And that's if you want to treat the conditions like lupus, like melasma. You want to reduce their flares.
Mm-hmm.
But for if you don't have that, if you don't have a strong family history of skin cancer, things like that, I think getting sun is fine. It
Yeah.
makes you feel better. It provides your skin with some benefits. You do get a vitamin D response. There are many things to that.
Yeah. So, but there's a couple of things I want to hit still. Melasma also can and very often does have a hormonal component. Yes.
100%.
Like
It's
big time.
100.
I had it right after I had my son, but then it went away.
Yep. It's four things, and why it's so frustrating is we don't have a good control of treating all four. It's genetic predisposition,
Mm-hmm.
it's hormones, it's sunlight, and now we're understanding there's some vascular component to it.
Really?
Yeah, which
Almost
is
like a
why
rosacea or something?
there's something about increased blood vessels, and it's thought to be related to when pregnancy occurs, which is why we used to call it the mask of pregnancy.
Yeah.
Um, but we have a great way of protecting against the sun.
Mm-hmm.
We have an okay way of protecting against vascularity. We can't control hormones or genetics very well,
No.
which is why melasma is so hard to treat.
Right. But on the hormonal side, if it's pregnancy related, it does go away, does it not? Or does it
Not always.
sometimes go away?
N-
Because
eh,
in me, it went away
Often,
completely.
so often it gets better.
Mm.
Some people will have complete regression. A lot of people won't. It tends, and this is anecdotal. I don't know if this has been published or not, but I see that women who tend to have girls or have had multiple pregnancies, and there are girls, tend to have melasma that stays longer, and it's thought to be maybe a prolonged progesterone estrogen response.
Mm.
And also women who are on birth control or medicines that control their acne, like spironolactone or birth control, will have their melasma stay.
Right. That's interesting. Okay, so that's that. What about the so
So
there's
many things. So
so
many
many
things.
things.
Yeah.
So there's another I will call it a trend. It's not new. I think it's been around for a long time of postmenopausal women or women perimenopausal applying estrogens to their skin.
Yeah.
And I've read that, there have been some studies that say, well, certain estrogens can drive melasma, other estrogens are better.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know that our skin wrinkles because we lose estrogen as we go through menopause.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on topical estrogens?
So to unpack that a little bit,
Yeah.
we for certain, as women enter menopause, their relative estrogen to testosterone ratio drops.
Yeah.
So estrogen is exceptionally protective of skin, hydration, suppleness, hair thickness, protective against breakouts, adult acne, things like that. So as estrogen drops, we see skin tend to dry out, look a little bit more lackluster. Women say their hair gets a little bit more frizzy or
Mm-hmm.
loses its shine, which is from the cuticle that gets lost. So estrogen provides a lot of amazing benefits for the quality of your skin, hair, and nails. In terms of topical estrogens, the question still remains whether it's the vehicle of that estrogen or the estrogen itself that's providing the majority of the cosmetic benefits. Meaning, the vehicle is some sort of cream or ointment,
Mm-hmm.
and just using that provides the hydration back to your skin, not the estrogen itself, because the argument is that the concentration of estrogen in topical products isn't enough to stimulate a DNA level change, because estrogen are hormones, they're hormone messaging signals, and they actually change the cell's DNA in the nucleus. So
Mm-hmm.
the topicals are thought not to be strong enough to actually cause those changes, and maybe it's the vehicle itself. That being said, doesn't matter. If you're getting an improvement, I don't think there's anything wrong with using it.
Okay.
And a lot of women have benefit to it. So I think if you're noticing an improvement in your skin's quality, you like the way it looks, no problem. In terms of melasma,
Mm-hmm.
melasma tends to be more driven by progesterone than estrogen, and it tends to be driven from the inside out. So I haven't seen enough data to convince me that topical applications will increase your melasma.
Okay, cool. Good. Next topic. So I've got a lot of sun damage on my arms, right? So uneven pigment.
Yeah, like
So,
mottled pigmentation.
yeah. And whoops, lost you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. You're back. So if I tan, it fades, it's like the background catches up, everything looks great. And then as soon as the tan goes away, it's like, oh, that's back. So there's a narrative that says that it has to do with consuming oxidized and poor quality fats that are oxidizing in the skin. Do you have an opinion on that? Or do you think it's just melanocytes kind of getting old and cranky and not working properly anymore?
So you probably have a couple things going on, which is really common. One is this condition called idiopathic guttate hypomelanosis, which is this mottled kind of white freckling that can occur in background of sun-damaged skin that we see as a result of long-term UV paralyzing the cells that produce our skin's color, which are the melanocytes.
Oh, I have that
Melanocytes
a
are
little bit here. I don't have that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Melanocytes are very sensitive. I mean, looking at them wrong will make them not produce color anymore.
Huh.
The other thing that can that occurs, especially in Middle Eastern patients, is we have what's called macular seborrheic keratoses. They're these flat brown spots that people often mistake for sunspots.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not actually sunspots, they're genetic growths, but they're flat. And when you lose your background tan, those stand out as brown spots. When you get your background tan, you don't see those anymore.
Yeah.
So my inkling is that you probably have some macular seborrheic keratoses that get obscured when you get your color back.
Yeah.
In terms of oxidized fats, the challenge with those statements is that there is no verified way to know that the fat that's consumed orally, diet, what have you, actually gets absorbed through the gut mucosa, shuffles and finds itself specifically into the skin, and then causes that problem.
Yeah.
In fact, and this goes back to when we look at collagen supplements.
Yeah.
I love collagen.
Yeah.
It's in our
This is a
product,
perfect
but
segue to where we're going to
yeah,
finish. So keep going. Yes.
when you consume a lot of collagen, there's several good stool studies that have shown that the majority of the consumed collagen, we tag something in the collagen, it shows up 90% shows up in your poop.
God. Okay.
So we know that there's a finite, rate limiting step in which your gut will decide, okay, in the colon or in the small intestine, let's absorb this or let's not.
Yeah.
And until somebody can show me where the oxidized fat is actually trafficked through
Yeah.
the gut mucosa and shows up in the skin, and it's the actual one that you consumed, I'm a little, I don't believe it.
You're not. Well, and it's interesting because
But sorry,
you'd have to tag it.
on that note, you
But
bring up
there is
something
one
important.
thing that does that, right?
Say that again.
No, say what you were going to say.
I was going to say, on that note, that does bring up something tangential that's important. If your diet is of low quality,
Mm-hmm.
if you're probably not eating good stuff, you're probably in a state of inflammation. I do believe in an anti-inflammatory diet. We do know that in multiple studies, this does improve skin disease. We actually use it, anti-inflammatory diets, to treat psoriasis, eczema, what have you.
Yeah.
If you're eating not great food, your skin's immune system is probably a little bit dysfunctional in a way that I can't quantify in a lab test.
Yeah.
But if you're having, donuts, soda, and a burger every single day, there's some degree of immune dysfunction that can relate to, things that shouldn't go on. So
Right.
while I don't think, the oxidized fat will make it to your skin, you're parlaying on something that is important, that you're probably not eating a good diet, which probably means your body's not functioning optimally.
Yeah. I am eating a good diet, but that's fine.
Yeah. Not you.
Yeah,
Others.
no.
Others.
All right.
Not
Now
you.
let's talk about something. So I want to talk about one compound in particular, which is going to lead us to kind of our swan song as you rush off to deal with patients. There are a couple of different supplements that actually do have really impressive profiles for skin. And I actually
100%.
did a solo episode on one of them a few months ago because I was personally fascinated by it. And the one I want to start with is astaxanthin, because
Yes.
astaxanthin is this really cool fat, like little compound that research has shown will migrate to the skin when you
Yes.
take it orally. Plus, it has topical benefits, but really, it's the oral supplementation. We talk a little bit
100%.
about that?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love it. It's a fat soluble antioxidant,
yeah.
usually derived from things like microalgae, krill, shrimp, even salmon.
Hmm.
And I love it because it's in the skin world, it's not very well recognized for some reason or another.
Really?
In most dermatologic worlds, cosmeceuticals, they don't recognize it as much as functional groups that are wellness, anti-aging have recognized this. I love it, which is why we put it actually in our product, Sunpowder. But astaxanthin, when consumed orally, in several really cool studies, has been shown to improve skin elasticity, fine lines and wrinkles, signs of aging, and even collagen density that has improved about 30% over placebo controls.
Wow.
And these are both randomized trials and open label trials. And it doesn't matter the source of the astaxanthin. Obviously, you want a good quality source, but the
Hmm.
dose we see is anywhere from 4 to 12 milligrams a day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm a huge fan of astaxanthin. Now,
Yeah, it's like I don't know why it's a secret in derm. People don't like, it's not very well known in
it's
dermatology,
interesting.
but I love it.
Yeah. Well, and it even some people will refer to it as having conferring some protective effects versus
Yeah, yeah.
versus sun
So
exposure.
so there's a couple studies that show that it increases your body's tolerance to both visible and UV light,
Yeah.
meaning you can be outside a little bit longer before your skin turns red or burns, presumably because it increases its antioxidant skin's antioxidation profile,
Hmm.
which means it can tolerate insults from UV exposure a little bit better.
Okay.
And there's amazing plant and supplements that can do this, that can help your body fight things from the outside for your skin, but from the inside out. And
Yeah.
it's remarkable. Astaxanthin is one of my favorites. There's another supplement or a plant called polypodium,
Yeah.
and we found this in the Amazon rainforest. Polypodium is one of the ingredients we have in our product called Sunpowder, and this fern we found that indigenous populations in the Amazon would eat. They would eat the leaves of this fern before they went on their fishing expedition on the Amazon. And they
Oh,
could be out for 3 or 4 days before their skin burned.
wow.
So we
That's
took this,
crazy.
we took this fern and we studied it for about 8 to 10 years. And we found that the polyphenolic compounds in the leaf, root, and stem essentially act as, and I don't want to use the term sunscreen because the FDA will get all weird about it, but
Yeah.
it acts as an internal sunscreen. It increases the time that you can be exposed to UV or sunlight before you burn.
Wow.
And it's an amazing, and it's a plant. I mean, it's not a chemical. It's literally from the Amazon rainforest. It's grown in Central America and South America pretty wildly, and we use this for things like sunburn protection. We use it for people with things like lupus, people with skin cancer, people who undergo cosmetic laser procedures who want to keep their skin looking young longer before the damage comes back. They take polypodium as a supplement to kind of protect their skin from the inside out. I mean, I jokingly say I'm the skin cancer surgeon that often forgets to wear sunscreen, and most of the time I'm doing things where I can't reapply. I'm surfing, I'm swimming with my family, I'm hiking, I'm skiing.
Hmm.
So I take polypodium and it keeps me safe. I mean, the worst sunburns I've had honestly have been sometimes skiing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just assume
You
you're
don't
like
think
not
of
even
it.
thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I take some polypodium and I'm very well
You're
protected. Now
good.
it doesn't obviously replace sunscreen, especially if you're
Yeah.
an individual that has high risk. But it's a way your body can actually protect itself from the inside out.
So you said something about collagen earlier, saying that it
Yes.
just goes through the gut and ends up in poop. But in your sun powder, which I
Yeah.
want to let people know about now, I wanted to know about the trials and the
Yeah. Yeah.
research really
Absolutely.
quickly. But there's collagen in there, so tell me about the
Yes.
collagen that's in
So there,
there.
yes, 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 and we can run a little longer because I love what we're talking about. I think this
Okay.
is awesome. Um, so collagen, so collagen originally was, kind of, people looked at it skeptically in the dermatology and cosmetics world because collagen is made of a triple helix of three amino acids: glycine, proline, and usually hydroxyglycine or hydroxyproline. And these are non-essential amino acids, meaning
Hmm.
your body can make them from your diet.
Right.
And when they're non-essential, you can actually consume carbohydrates, normal proteins and fats, and your body will make these. So a lot of scientists in the 90s and 2000s said, yeah, I don't know about collagen. It's a non-essential molecule. Your body will make that.
Yeah. Plus, it's really
Well,
big, right? So
yeah, yeah,
it's not like
exactly.
you're going to absorb it through the gut.
Exactly. But what we did see in the last 5 years, there's some really good data and randomized data that collagen supplementation does improve the appearance and the quality of the skin. It does improve fine lines and wrinkles. It does improve collagen density in the skin. It improves the appearance of aged skin. Now there's a couple caveats to that. It may be in that patients who take that have restrictive diets.
Hmm.
Patients who take that may not absorb their natural diet proteins very well.
Which
So
happens
the
a lot.
supplementation
Yeah.
does help. Yeah. And especially in older patients, as their
Hmm.
gut's ability to absorb things is not as high, the supplement helps.
Yeah.
There's a threshold as to how much your body can absorb. So historically, we used to say, people would take 30 grams, 40 grams, etc. You don't need that much. Most people will max out their absorption somewhere around 5 to 15
Okay.
grams.
Interesting.
The other factor is collagen itself, like you mentioned, is a big molecule. So absorption is optimized when the collagen is broken down before you consume it. So we call it, hydrolyzed peptides, where it's broken down into small chains,
Yeah.
and that is much more readily absorbed by the gut.
Okay.
And the other important thing with collagen is that your body cannot make the triple helix without vitamin C.
Right. Because
Vitamin
the
C
vitamin C
is
is
an
very important
essential.
for collagen. Yeah.
Exactly, which is why, every probably 3 or 4 times a year, and I'm in Los Angeles, I'm not necessarily in a third world country, 3 or 4 times a year, I see patients with scurvy.
Come on.
Yeah, because they have very restrictive diets. People who only eat, like, literally, I have a patient who only eats white bread. He has a food aversion illness. He only eats white bread, and he came in bleeding gums, hair falling out, textbook scurvy.
Well,
We
not to
gave him
mention
some vitamin
protein
C supplement. Yeah,
deficiency. Yeah.
yeah. We gave him
Yeah.
some vitamin C and it corrected. We saw
Wow.
this in New York City probably a couple times a year. There's always people with, interesting dietary habits or beliefs. So vitamin C is really, really, really critical. I mean, it's essential
Yeah.
for collagen formation. So if you're going to take collagen, you believe in it, take, have some form of vitamin C. We actually blended both of that in our product.
Okay. So now there's another ingredient in your product that I think we need to talk about because
Yes,
it is all the rage, or different forms of it are all the rage.
yes, yes, yes,
And there's a lot of it in this supplement that you made,
yes. Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's crucial for skin. So
yes.
talk to us about nicotinamide.
I love, love, love nicotinamide. And interestingly, it's commonly mistaken for, and depending on which camp you're in, NAD, which is nicotine adenosine dinucleotide, NMN, or
NR,
niacin, exactly, or
NNR.
NR.
Yeah.
NR, exactly,
Yeah.
and the nicotinamide riboside. And
Right.
these are different. They have different functions in the body. Um, Niacin, totally separate beast. Vitamin B3 does absolutely nothing for the skin or longevity, but unfortunately in the United States, we don't label the nicotinamides as anything different than niacin. So, people please pay attention to that. Niacin is not the same as nicotinamide or any of the
Okay.
nicotinamide derivatives.
Yeah.
NAD, NMN, thought to be really helpful for anti-aging, cellular energy transport. There are some things that I worry about a little bit with NAD and NMN. We won't go into that, but nicotinamide without the riboside or the adenosine moiety, just pure nicotinamide, which is the amide derivative of niacin,
Mm-hmm.
has been shown to allow our skin's DNA to repair itself faster. And this is not animal studies. This is not mice studies. Mice studies. This is phase 2 and phase 3 randomized trials published in our most prestigious medical journals in the world, in the Lancet, in Nature, and in the New England Journal of Medicine.
Wow.
And what we found in probably the biggest landmark study was that patients who took nicotinamide at 1,000 milligrams a day or 500 milligrams twice a day
Mm-hmm.
had about almost a 30% decrease in the likelihood of developing non-melanoma skin cancers than patients who took placebo.
Wow.
And this was replicated in patients who had 2 or more skin cancers in the past. So when people have skin cancer, we know that their likelihood is more than 50%
Mm-hmm.
to develop another one. I call it like the popcorn effect. If one,
Yeah.
if a kernel's going to pop here, it's going to pop here, it's going to pop here, it's going to pop here. When patients supplemented with nicotinamide, their risk and their development dropped significantly. And it also did the same for even precancers, what we call actinic keratoses.
Mm-hmm.
And this risk drop stayed as long as you stayed on the supplement.
Wow.
And when you got off the vitamin, your risk factor went back up.
Wow. So it's just, so you just got to take it.
Yeah, it's like brushing your teeth or, drinking water or wearing your sunscreen or,
Yeah.
putting on deodorant. It's a part of your activity of daily living.
Yeah.
What I love about it is it's a water soluble B vitamin derivative.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a pharmaceutical drug. It doesn't interact with anything. And how often can we actually verify in animal and human studies that we can cancer risk with a vitamin?
No, that's
It's
amazing.
freaking awesome.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's really exciting. So you've gone ahead with you have a business partner I saw on your website.
Yeah.
The two of you are
So
like, okay, we can't stand it anymore. We have this astaxanthin, we have the
yeah,
polypodium, we've got the
yeah,
this
yeah,
and the nicotinamide. Like, we got to throw this stuff together and put it out there. And then you went and you did trials on your own stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And so a lot of this originated from patients we would see.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of high risk skin cancers when I was a full time professor at the university, and I trained up at Stanford, and we had a consortium of high risk patients. And my partner and colleague, Dr. Abruk, over in Miami, sees a lot of cosmetic patients, and there was a gap of things that we could offer patients to reduce their risk. How many times can you tell patients wear sunscreen? We got it. It's ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Sunscreen, it'll protect you against skin cancer. Sunscreen, your cosmetics will look good, but there has to be something else. And then we started looking in the literature and started doing studies and looking at studies that affected our skin's health from the inside out. And we said, you know what? Lifestyle or functional skin health is something that's not there.
Mm-hmm.
There's functional health for gut, there's functional health for mental well-being, there's functional health for a lot of things. It's not there for skin, and why not? It's such an easy assessed organ. It's hard for me to look at you, Nat, and say, hey, I can tell your liver doesn't work well. I can't do that, but I can tell you and say, hey, your skin's happy today, your skin's hydrated, you're looking good.
Mm-hmm.
So we put these together, this formula together. We actually filed for a patent. Ironically, there isn't even a patent for this product until we formulated it, and we are running clinical trials on this supplement both here in Los Angeles and in Miami.
Perfect place.
Yeah, exactly. And we're looking at its ability to mitigate sun damage
Hmm.
or sunburn risk. So right now we are running a trial where we radiate the skin with UVB at different doses before the supplement and 2 hours after consuming the supplement, and then 1 week after taking it daily.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, our patient results are unbelievable. I'll text you a picture. You can see a marked difference. You get, nice red blistering sunburn,
Yeah.
and then some mild redness. And this is on the single dose.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's
That's
yeah.
crazy.
We're having a
That's
lot of fun.
exciting.
Our second study's on lasers and looking at when we resurface skin.
Mm-hmm.
If taking a supplement like this, that's essentially plant based, completely organic, water soluble, something that's safe and effective, will actually reduce the likelihood of sun damage coming back post-procedure.
Yeah.
And right now we're seeing about a 50% increase in the time between needing resurfacing treatments.
Wow. Like a
Yeah.
resurfacing treatment. So
Yeah.
it's
So like patients
protecting
come in, they're like, hey, I hate my sunspots. What can you do about them? We laser resurface the skin. Eventually they will come back. Eventually you're going to be outside, you're going to do your things, and the sunspots and aging comes back. And we usually laser patients once a year or something like that.
Yeah.
We're finding that because it provides not only protection from UV exposure, but it actually, the antioxidant properties help the skin regenerate. We're finding that patients are not needing laser resurfacing longer and longer. They look better longer.
And then was there something else? Was there a third factor? Wrinkles?
Yeah, for
Is there a
sure, for
wrinkle
sure.
benefit as
Yeah,
well?
yeah, absolutely. The collagen in there, the glutathione and the vitamin C, as well as the polypodium and the nicotinamide and the astaxanthin, all together. Wrinkling is caused by various things: sun damage, hydration status, genetic predisposition, environmental factors that cause aging. So if you can address all four of those, hydration addressed with collagen, we have hyaluronic acid in there, we have low dose of biotin in there. Those will address hydration status. Things that address sun damage, polypodium, astaxanthin, nicotinamide. Things that address genetic predisposition like glutathione and nicotinamide. If you can address all these things, then you improve fine lines and wrinkles. And we're seeing there's a really good before and after we're going to publish of just the supplement itself.
Wow.
Nothing else. 3 months.
How old was she?
She, I think, well, we have a few. We have ranging from 35 to 57.
Okay.
So the proof is in the pudding in the 50-year-olds and longer because they have cumulative sun damage. But ironically, the most cosmetically sensitive patients tend to be a little bit in the younger age.
Yeah.
So if you can encapsulate and show that it works across all ages, then it's believable.
Well, also, if you can, like I say this to younger people all the time, like if you can prevent it, way ahead of the game, because fixing it is a whole nother project.
Ounce of prevention versus a kilo of treatment. I know.
Okay, I have last two questions. I'm sorry.
Yes, no, there's a lot of fun.
So when you resurface the skin,
yes,
does that cause long-term damage? Like, tell me about, is there a long-term impact?
Great question.
How often how many times can you resurface before you run out of skin, or does it just
great question. So you can do a few things. So you can resurface as many times as you want, so long as you give the skin time to heal itself.
Okay.
Because essentially you are injuring or destroying the top layer of skin. So imagine you fell down and scraped your elbow. You wouldn't re-scrape it, right? You'd probably wait till your skin is healed before you go back on the bike that you fell off from.
But it might not heal exactly the same way, right?
So that depends on the depth of injury and the type of injury. So you're absolutely right. In terms of long-term versus short-term risks, the long-term benefits we know factually are there's an increase in collagen density, increase in elastin density, thickening of the dermis, which is the second layer of our skin, which gives us our volume, our suppleness. There's a decrease in non-melanoma skin cancer risk. That just got published from Harvard.
No way.
Yeah.
Because you're getting rid of the damaged DNA.
Yes. And and we knew this for many, many years. We just didn't have the data to publish it. But we knew that patients who underwent cosmetic laser resurfacing had less skin cancers.
Oh my God.
And now we got the 20-year data, and not all devices do that, but the pioneering devices were shown to do that, particularly a device called Fraxel, which I love. We run this day in and day out. So those are the four.
So Fraxel's good.
I love Fraxel. Fraxel and CO2 resurfacing. Those are my two favorite, and those are the ones that have shown skin cancer risk reduction.
Wow, that's amazing. And can you do it only on the face, or can you do arms too?
Anywhere. You can do whole body. Yeah.
Well, that might be.
So those are the four benefits. Now, you asked about long-term damage.
Yeah, like over time.
The short answer to that question is no. No long-term damage. However, there's an asterisk to that. When we resurface the skin, it's essentially baby skin. It's literally the stem cell region of the skin reaching the surface faster.
Oh, so you mean the new skin is like baby skin?
The new skin is like baby skin. So it's prone to burning. It's prone to environmental toxins and pollutants. So if you go outside and you go to the beach after a resurfacing session, you're going to have some problems.
Yeah. So do you have
Those are
to be
the
more careful with the sun in general
very much
from
so.
there on in?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so. So those are the long term risks are if you're constantly doing these procedures and you're not sun protecting or taking precautions from environmental toxins and pollutants,
Hmm.
like you get laser resurfacing and you go back down to your coal mine, you're going to have some problems.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I said I had one more. I keep writing it down. Okay, yeah, this is it. Do you know, and you don't have to rattle them off here. I would put them in the show notes. Do you have the list of genes that people would look out for to say that they have a higher risk of skin cancer?
So that's a good question. So when we talk about genetics,
Yeah.
there's what we call Mendelian genetics, which are genetics passed down from mom or dad that you can test for, like I don't know, BRCA, the breast cancer gene,
Yeah.
BRCA,
Yeah.
or the retinoblastoma, the gene that predisposes you to eye
Like
cancer,
retinitis. Okay. Yeah.
or even the gene that determines green eye, blue eye versus brown eye. When we look at skin cancer, the genes are not Mendelian in inheritance. There's about 150 implicated genes. They're not easily tested for.
Wow.
They're not like if mom has it, I have a 25% chance of getting it. If dad has it, there are a few genes that will do that. For example, the CDKN2A gene almost guarantees you're going to get a melanoma if you have it.
Huh.
It's almost 100% likely that you will have a melanoma. But by and large, the skin cancers that we see that we say are genetic are not testable genes like that.
Mm.
We just don't have the skill set to test for those
So
genes.
you're seeing them occur through the lineage, basically.
Yeah,
Like
we
mom
see them
had
occur
them.
through the lineage, but we don't know which of the 150 or 200 genes it is, and trying to
Yeah.
piece them together. Like there's a condition called Gorlin syndrome or basal cell nevus syndrome, and
Yeah.
that's guaranteed you're going to have basal cells for the rest of your life. Usually patients come to me, they're on their 100th or 150th. And there's a
Really.
gene we test for called the patched gene. And that one you would already know. Your mom's had 100 basal cells, your grandma's had 100 basal cells,
My
you
grandmother
know.
had none.
Yeah. So when we talk about genetics in terms of like ability to detect for them, we're in our infancy in
Yeah.
understanding
Yeah, I
genetics.
think with my mom and like my dad's had a million, but I think in my parents' case, it's environmental, and
For
like
sure.
it's not. I don't think it's a genetic thing. I think it's
Yeah, yeah.
some of those other factors that that haven't been
100%.
defined, right? Like it's
100%.
toxins in the environment. It's
Their immune
work,
system getting weaker,
the
you
immune
know.
system getting
Yeah,
weaker, working in a department store for my mom for a long time, and so being exposed to those neon light, like there's so many different
lots of
pieces of the
lots of
puzzle.
factors.
And also, we were the family who, the minute it was holiday time, we'd get in the car, drive,
Yeah,
I don't know, like 20 million hours from Montreal down to Virginia Beach or wherever,
yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah,
lie
yeah,
out in the
yeah.
sun. My mother would have this massive cold sore explosion because her immune system would go nuts
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the shock of the
Yeah, that's
UV.
exactly right. Cold sores, the number one trigger is UV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, believe me, I've lived the story. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
anyway, Teo, I know you've got to go. This has been an incredible conversation. I hope we get to
Yeah,
do it again because I still have more
absolutely.
questions. But
Absolutely.
in the meantime, I want to highlight that you and your partner have developed a product that has actually been shown to move the needle for people. So let's
Yes.
tell people where they can get it. I know on your website you've got pictures, you talk about the clinical
Yeah.
trials. It's
Yeah.
great source of information, and it's got all those things we've talked about.
Yeah.
Polypodium, my new word of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I love this product because it fills a gap that wasn't there for skin. It's
Yeah.
functional skin protection. And it's another form that you can provide for skin health and sunburn reduction. You can find the product on the website sunpowder.co. All
Oh,
of the public .co, not com, .co. All of the published science is there. Our clinical trial outcomes are there. There is a social media handle, Drink Sunpowder. You can see both skin cancer cases there, information about the product, information about patients that I see and treat all the time. There is a TikTok handle, I think it's Drink Sunpowder as well, where we talk about skin cancer, skin health, the supplement itself. And for anybody listening, Nat15 will give you guys a discount for the product. I know summer's coming around, and it's another way to provide yourself some protection if you're going to enjoy the sun. You're going to be out surfing, you're going to be hiking, or playing tennis, golf, what have you. Another form of protection is often favored
From the inside out. I
yeah,
love
from the
it.
inside out. Exactly.
Dr. Soleymani, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so
Oh, it's
much
been a
for
pleasure. My
taking the
pleasure. Yeah, of
time.
course. You can obviously tell I get excited when we talk about these things, and many things to talk about. So hopefully there'll be a number two, and we can continue our conversation. But thank you for having me. If you guys have any questions, you guys can reach out. I have a small social media presence. It's just Teo Soleymani MD on Instagram. You can find us on our website. You can email me. Feel free to reach out. Anything skin, happy to help you guys out with.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.